All right, ladies and gentlemen. First game up. Got the Denver Broncos out on the road facing the New York Jets. Jets, 7.5-point home favorites currently. Moneyman Mitch, how you feeling here?
It's a tough one because we saw the Broncos last week play basically flawless football against Tampa Bay, but here they are on the road for a second consecutive week. The thing is that we saw from Denver was in that game against Pittsburgh, the 19 penalties, between the two teams that were accepted in the game, 26 total penalties, and then they go to Tampa Bay, and it's just a totally different situation. I think Denver has the team that can muck it down and keep it close, and I just think getting that hook just usually is a good place to be. The Jets, looked pretty solid last week, and that usually means probably due to fall flat on their face. I'm going to take the Broncos in this one plus the points.
Fair enough. Big Al McMorty, how you feeling?
Well, there has only been one team all season to have covered as a favorite of six or more points, and that was the New York Jets last week when they blew out the Patriots 24-3 as a 6.5-point home favorite. But overall, so far this year, favorites of six or more have gone 1-12 ATS. But guys, I'm running the other way. I still like the Jets here as a big favorite. When you take a look at how teams like Denver, who are off 19-point or greater upset wins, how they've gone in their next game, they've gone just 130 and 177 ATS. And then also Denver is 0-7 ATS its last seven and 15-30 ATS its last 45, off an upset win when playing an opponent off a straight up win. So I'm going to lay the 7.5 with the Flyboys.
I'm going to lay it here with the Jets as well. I'm not overly in love with the hook on the 7, but I do think the Jets are a touchdown better than the Broncos. The Broncos, hell of a game last week. They shocked me by how well they played in that game, but I'm not going to overreact to one game. They're still a bottom-tier team, in my opinion. I think the Jets are, at least a top 15, top 10 team right now currently. And as the season progresses, as they get more comfortable with Aaron Rodgers under center, learning his mannerisms, the defense, I think, gets a little better as the season progresses. I think we'll see the Jets continue to get better and better. This is a game, they're head and shoulders the better football team. They should handle business. Next game up, we got the Minnesota Vikings. Surprise team this season. I don't think many people would have thought this team would be 3-0 currently at this point in the season, but here they are. But now they're 3-point dogs on the road in Lambeau. Big Al McMorty, how you feeling here?
Oh, well, last week they were a 1.5-point home dog and they blew out Houston 34-7. As you mentioned, they're undefeated, 3-0 in the season. But unfortunately for the Vikings, undefeated teams off upset home wins by more than 20 points. They've gone 1-12 ATS when they weren't favored by 4 or more points in the next game. And even worse, Minnesota's now 5-13 ATS on the division road when facing a division opponent with a 625 or better win percentage. I like Green Bay here. I'm going to lay the points with the Pack.
Go Pack Go, says Big Al McMorty. I'm going back and forth in this football game. If they're giving me 3 with Minnesota, though, the field goal, I think I'm going to take the 3. Looming over this game is Jordan Love. I'm seeing reports he should be back, could be back, but it also could be Skinny Malik still. Skinny Malik ain't played that bad. Shout out to him, He's played better than I thought he would by really a long shot, in my opinion. I guess I got to give credit to Matt LaFleur and that coaching. Regardless, if it's Jordan Love, I don't love that he's coming off an MCL strain early, especially against a Vikings defense that's looked as good as it's looked thus far this season. I think that's been the story of this season. Brian Flores has his Minnesota defense looking vaunting. We've heard everybody talk about it. We heard the Texans come out and talk about it immediately after the game. We heard Brock Purdy go and give him credit right after the game. This Vikings defense right now is probably the scariest in the league just through this early season. I don't trust Jordan Love immediately coming off that injury. And then if it is Malik Willis, I don't know if I necessarily trust him either laying points. I wouldn't be surprised if the Green Bay Packers won the football game. But laying a field goal, I don't want to do. I'll grab the points in my back pocket with Minnesota in a game. I still believe they can go and win outright. Mitch, how you feeling?
I think this game is going to be super tight one. I agree with you, Jay. I think it's just going to be a very tight game. You got strength on strength. with that Minnesota run defense against that Green Bay run offense. Green Bay averaging over 200 yards per game on the ground, while the Vikings allowing just 71.3. It's number one against, rushing versus number two rush defense. The passing side for the Vikings, obviously, they've been ahead a lot. So teams have been playing, been throwing the ball a lot on them. They had the blowout win against Carolina. They had the Niners dead to rights for the bulk of that game. And, last game, of course, the Sam Darnold show, the 4 touchdown performance. I think that, Darnold and Malik could easily be the 2 comeback players of the year if Malik actually gets some quality time. And I think hats off to him for getting into shape. And I mean, you see him out there, and we said it, during our halftime show, clearly in the best shape of his career. He looks like a different player out there. You don't even recognize him. He is Kyle Lowry of the NFL. There's the old Malik and then the new one. But I think in this particular case, I think I'm going to take the points because I think this game is very much a pick 'em. The line sets up to be that way. And, I think if I take the points, the worst I'm going to do is probably a push if I can get the 3. But I'm seeing 2.5s out there now.
Next game up, we got a division battle, NFC South. We got the New Orleans Saints. Hey, they're out on the road facing the Atlanta Falcons. Both teams coming off L's last week. The Falcons, they lost at home at the crib on Sunday Night Football to the defending champs, the Kansas City Chiefs. And New Orleans, well, through 2 weeks, they were riding high. I think they probably had the most disappointing loss last week because the Eagles were completely injury-riddled. The Saints stole the momentum late in that football game and then gave it right back. The Dallas Goedert game is what I'm going to sum that one up to last week. Who are the New Orleans Saints really is the million-dollar question. I think we've seen the high of high, and we've seen a really low. Losing that game at home last week, they had no business doing that. Who are the Saints is the million-dollar question. I'm going to grab the points with New Orleans in this football game. I think they have a legitimate chance to win this game outright. I think their defense, who played decently last week, I think they caused Jalen Hurts and them some real issues and troubles, just were terrible in spots and situations, which cost them the football game. But I think here against the Falcons, they'll be able to do enough. I think I want to see more of the Saints from week 1 and week 2. In this football game. I still have questions and concerns about this Atlanta football team. To me, Atlanta still feels overrated and overvalued. Kirk Cousins, you got to show me, my man. You got to show me, my man. So, interesting game, tough game, divisional game. But the Saints, as we discussed, earlier in week 2, for some odd reason, they're a better football team on the road. And I don't even think many people would understand that or think that. But I'm going to take the Saints here. I'm going to take them straight up on the money line or grab the points. Mitch, how you feeling?
Saints are one of the best road teams over the last 5 years, over the last 10 years. Any way you slice it, they're like top 3. They're up there like with the Chiefs and the Patriots type numbers as far as the road wins go. But the thing is about this particular game is this is a rivalry game, and this is of all the rivalries there are in professional sports, this one is the closest to a college football rivalry that there is. And these teams really hate each other's guts. I mean, this one goes way back. These fan bases, they hate each other. There's been some of the wildest games and wildest finishes in this series of any of the games out there. But the thing about this one is that while the Falcons have a slightly better passing attack over the Saints defense, the Saints defense and offense really has the better numbers in the rushing game. Saints are way better at stopping the run, and they're way better at rushing the football. And I think in these rivalry games, these emotional type games, I like teams that can run the football and play defense. And I'm going to stick with the Saints in this one. I think they got a chance to win it outright. But either way, if this game got on a weird number and we covered with 2.5, I wouldn't be shocked on that either. But if there's value on the money line, I'll take it. If it's plus 105 or something, I'll be with the points. Al?
Yeah, I mean, Mitch, you're right. This is one of the biggest rivalries in the NFL. And when these two teams last met at the end of last season, the Saints blew out the Falcons 48-17. But you know what they say about paybacks. And I'm going to take Atlanta in this big revenge game as NFL favorites. If they're off a straight-up loss and they're also playing with revenge from a game they gave up 48 or more points, they've covered 91% over the last 45 years. So I really like Atlanta here. And, Atlanta's played a really difficult schedule so far. They played, of course, the defending champions and the Chiefs. The other two teams they played, they beat Philly, and Philly's won every other game. And then also, they lost to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's undefeated this year. So I like Atlanta here. I think the price is really good too, under the field goal. So I'm going to lay it.
We got Tampa Bay at home at the crib. They're dogs in this football game after a bad week last week against the Denver Broncos. Philadelphia, we just talked about a little bit in the last segment, in their game against the Saints. Mitch, it's an interesting game here. How you feeling? Remember, the Bucs put the Philadelphia Eagles out of the playoffs last season. Got some playoff revenge in this game. How you feeling?
We got playoff revenge, but we also have a lot of injured players on both sides of the ball. Last week, the Bucs was basically a backup team that hit the field in that game. Had I really studied a little bit harder, I would have been heavily on the other side in that one. You live and learn. But the thing is that when we look at this particular game, the Bucs are still, their injury list is a mile long. The Eagles have some injuries, but not nearly as bad as what the Bucs are. And I think you put this Eagles team up against a second string team, it just is a mismatch all the way. I think the Eagles kind of take it all out on the Bucs in this game. I like the Eagles.
Fair enough. Big Al McMorty, what'd you like here?
Well, as far as playoff revenge goes, that only works at home, doesn't work on the road at all. So you can forget about using that as a motivating factor to play Philadelphia. As far as the Eagles, I played on the Eagles last week. That was one of my top two plays, along with the Carolina Panthers, and I wasn't surprised when they upset the Saints 15-12. But they're now playing their second straight road game, and winning teams, they're a terrible 68-95 ATS on the non-division road if they won outright as a road underdog in the previous game. And they're now playing an opponent that's not off a straight-up an ATS win. So with Tampa off that big loss to Denver, I just think this is a reversal game. I like the Buccaneers in this game plus the points.
I'm with you, Big Al McMorty. I like the Bucs in this one as well. It's overreaction. Everybody watched Bucs get beat up. Everybody watched the Philadelphia Eagles last week pull one out. Mitch is correct, and that is what makes me nervous about the Tampa Bay injuries. But still, when the money was on the table for both of these two teams last year, playoff time, we saw who the better team was, and that was Tampa. Now getting them at +2 at home as a dog, that's where I want to be, especially with Philly being just as banged up. I could make the argument that Philadelphia has the more key injuries. The Bucs probably have more injuries, but I think I can make the argument that Philadelphia has more key injuries. Both of their wide receivers, Devontae Smith will be banged up if he plays. And then, of course, A.J. Brown's still out. Their defense still has some key injuries. So their offensive line, we saw Lane Johnson miss time last game. So, keep your eye on the Philly injury report as well. I want to be on the dog, man, who just beat this team in the postseason last year. And now knowing Big Al says that the home team, that the playoff revenge really only works at home.
Yeah, remember Baltimore, Kansas City? Same situation.
Yeah, so it makes me like Tampa a little better, even more. So I think I'm on Tampa in this one. Next game up, man. It's kind of weird to say this, but you might have two of the worst teams in the league going at it in this one. The Cincinnati Bengals, 0-3 to start the season, out on the road facing the Carolina Panthers. It kind of hurts me to say that about the Cincinnati Bengals. Big Al, do they finally bounce back, or is this not a good football team?
They're, as Mitch will, I know I'm going to take the words out of Mitch's mouth. This is what they do every year, right? They start 0-2, 0-3 every single season. So I don't know. I never thought they were a great team going into the season, but I also think they're better than 0-3. So I just would call them right now the most disappointing team in football with that 0-3 record. But this is a perfect spot to step in and take the Cincinnati Bengals. Last week was a perfect spot to take the Carolina Panthers. As I mentioned that along with the Eagles, those were my top two plays in the NFL last week. But off that 36-22 upset win over the Raiders, now I want to go against Carolina. They got their win. But you take a look at how winless favorites. So Cincinnati obviously is a winless favorite here. When they're laying more than 3 points, they've gone 28-11 ATS versus opponents off Suat's wins. So perfect spot for Cincinnati here. I'm laying the points.
As much as it pains me to do so, Cincinnati's the play here in this football game. They got to get their shit together. And no better team to get their shit together against than the worst team in the league, in my opinion, the Carolina Panthers. Panthers did step up, play a good game under Andy Dalton last week, but I think their luck runs out in this football game. The main problem with the Cincinnati Bengals is their defense can't stop anything. We saw the Patriots move the football on them. Last week, the Washington Commanders scored on every possession. There was no punt for the Washington Commanders last week. So that's a real issue for Cincinnati. But their offense, I thought, was really clicking in that football game. I think we'll see their offense click again against this terrible Carolina defense. And this Carolina offense is not that great either. So if they can't fix their issues against a Carolina offense, then we really will have some major concerns about Cincinnati. But, Mitch, can you show me the list? I don't think I've referred to it on this show quite yet, but from last season, the number one team on the do not bet list was the Carolina Panthers. So last week was a perfect situation to take them. I did lean on them on this show last week, but this week, fading their ass. I'm taking Joe Shiesty, Jamar Chase, and the Cincinnati Bengals. Mitch?
I think, when you look at some of these numbers here for the Bengals, this team really isn't that bad. It's like the numbers don't really equal what's happened on the field, but where they've really struggled is actually on their special teams is where they've been terrible. And, even their kicker who's missing chip shots, has hurt them quite a bit. I think that, the Bengals also, you have to kind of look at the schedule too. I mean, they played in, they did lose at home to the Commanders, but they also played on the road in Kansas City. I don't know. I think the Bengals definitely bounce back here. I do believe they cover this spread. I'm not probably rushing to the window, but it's one of those ones that if I don't bet it, I'll probably be kicking myself because it might be one of our best chances to buy low on the Bengals that we get. So I'm going to buy low here on the Bengals. I think that their passing defense is pretty solid. I think they just need to shore up against the run a little bit. While the Panthers, they're just dreadful on both sides. I mean, their numbers just absolutely stink. This is a team that, drafted, number 1 2 years ago, and they benched the guy they drafted. I mean, that's usually not a good sign. Andy Dalton comes in. Not everyone exactly was game planning for this guy or for what he can do. The Raiders certainly didn't have it. Well, the Bengals know Andy Dalton pretty well, so I expect them to do a little bit better.
Quickly, I'll say this. Are you guys worried at all that this will be one of the more public plays come Sunday?
Well, I don't care. For me, I couldn't care less if it's public or not public. I don't give a shit what the public does, one way or the other.
Fair enough. Mitch?
Who the public likes?
Yeah.
I don't pay that much attention to it.
Fair enough.
No,
it's such a. For me, it's just such a ridiculous thing to even let that enter your calculations. I mean, because if you think that way, you'll never bet on the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Or you'll never bet on.
But Al, there's not really a public team, right?
I know,
but number. It's I believe there's a public number, but I don't believe there's a public team, right? There's a bad number and a good number. And, in the NFL especially where it's like, oh my God, it's tight.
Yeah, but you're right. It's all bullshit. I don't care and Mitch and I have talked about this all the time. I mean, even the numbers when it shows 89% on this or 64% on that, it's different depending on the sports books. And, I just don't pay any attention to any of that garbage.
Fair enough. I know our audience, they like to look at things in such of that nature. So they ask me all the time. So while I have you guys,
but our audience also,
that's why I ask
when they mention it, they don't have it right. And I think the answer is always going to be, right. There's a good number and a bad number, and there's a sharp number and a square number. And that's really all it is. All you can do is get your money in good. You know, all the other stuff
Yeah,
is
you have to
out
you
of
have to get
control.
right, but as far as thinking like, this team's going to be a public team, like I couldn't care less if 74% of the money's on the Bengals or not. It just doesn't
Well,
matter.
what if the Circa's at 6 and DraftKings is at 5? You know, does that matter?
Well, for me, it's about, like I release my games on Tuesday. So, for me, it's about getting the good number. I mean, so for me, I couldn't care less what Circa and DraftKings are on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'm already done.
Fair
But
enough.
at the time when you release your numbers, are you looking at that?
No, I'm not.
I definitely
I'm not.
guilty as charged, man.
Yeah,
I look at what
yeah.
Circa, Pinnacle, and Westgate, BetChris. I look at what they have. I look at what the other books have, and if you have a point differential, you have a big edge right away. Out of the gate.
I'm just early in the week. Just hit the numbers. I mean, already I've gotten really good numbers on I think 5 or 6 of my games. So.
Fair enough. I just thought I'd bring up a little bit of that here on today's show. Next game up, got the Jacksonville Jaguars out on the road facing the Houston Texans. Texans, 6-point favorites in this one. The Jags, man, this team has been terrible to start the season. They were terrible to end the season a year ago. It's just a terrible football team. I'm starting to think so, man. A lot of people love putting that word generational in front of at least one or two quarterbacks a season coming out of the draft, but as we start to look back, I don't see very many generational quarterbacks, and I'm eyeing you, sir, Trevor Lawrence, man. They're starting to say you're just a glorified Daniel Jones. That's not my words. That's the words of the people. I'm on the Texans in this one. I'm not overcomplicating it. The Jags have shown me, again, from last season into this one, until they showed me a pulse, they're dead. I know the Texans looked bad a week ago on the road in Minnesota, but now coming back home, I think they'll be fine. I talked about earlier how good I think that Minnesota defense is, how good Brian Flores is as a defensive coordinator. I don't think the Jags pose those same problems, those same threats. I think CJ at home at the crib probably has one of his best games of the early season. I expect Diggs to probably have a nice game as well. Give me Houston. They probably win big here. Mitch, how you feel?
Taking the Jags and the points. I just don't see it with Houston. To me, they're still one of the most overrated teams, and I think it goes back to the stat of the teams that are favored by X amount of points. It's just not really paying off this season. I think Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback than what we've seen, and I think that Jaguars are a better team. I don't think Peterson's a better coach than what we've seen, and that's of course subjective. But the thing is that the Jags have some of the worst defensive numbers in the league. They have some of the worst offensive numbers in the league. But this is a playoff team from a year ago, and this is they're just a better team than this. Well, I believe the Texans' defense is elite. Their offense is average at best, and I think Stroud had the monster season last year. I think this year he's got the sophomore curse, man. I think it's going to be a long year for the Texans offense. I'll take my 6 points and see how it treats me, but I think I think the Jags have a chance to win it outright, but I feel pretty comfortable getting 6.
Big Al McMorty, how you feeling here?
Well, both teams obviously were annihilated last week. The difference is one was on national TV where everyone saw, and no one was really watching the Houston-Minnesota game. Buffalo, they got touchdowns on their first 5 possessions. They led 34-3 at halftime. Final score was 47-10. So, as you mentioned, Jay, they're now 0-3 on the season. But I like Jacksonville to bounce back off that embarrassing loss on national TV. When you take a look at how underdogs have done off blowout losses on Monday Night Football by 20 or more points, they've gone 48-28 ATS in their next game. I just think, you pull that kind of clunker in front of the world, you're going to bounce back. I'm going to take the points.
Next game up, we're in Indianapolis, where the Colts are a short home dog here. The Pittsburgh Steelers 3-0, looking to start 4-0 under head coach Mike Tomlin. Mitch, do they start 4-0?
I don't think so. I think that starting 4-0 is just such a hard thing to do, or winning 4 games in a row in the NFL is just so hard to do. And to get that fourth win on the road, Justin Fields, it's still Justin Fields. He's good, and the defense has been outstanding. But the Colts present some other problems for the Steelers that they haven't really seen. I think this is the best running game that they've seen this season for sure by a long, long, long ways. Jonathan Taylor is pretty good, man. I watched him, and it's just I don't even know how he does it. Just you don't see running backs just grab the ball and run like this guy does anymore, but he certainly does. And I think he's good for at least one breakaway long touchdown, and it will change the game plan of the Steelers. I think Richardson, probably does just enough. I think it's going to be a hard-fought, close game, but I like the Colts at home.
Fair enough. Big Al McMorty, how you feel here?
Well, the Steelers have the best scoring defense in the league. They're giving up just 8.66 points per game, and the knee-jerk reaction might be to look for a low-scoring game here, but consider that great defensive teams with scoring averages of 11.6 points per game or less, those teams have now gone over the total 130 against 99 unders, going back to 1980 at Game 4 forward. So we're going to kind of take a contrarian play. We're going to look for a high-scoring game here. I'm going to take the over the 40 points.
I'm taking the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they start 4-0 and then lose their first game of the season next week to my Cowboys. I'm not overcomplicating this. When y'all look at the Steelers this week, when I look at the Steelers as a whole, they have two of the things you need to win in this league, and two things a lot of teams don't have: a good defense and a great coach. Those two things can take you far in this league. And they have a quarterback who hasn't wrecked the car, and I don't think he wrecks the car this week. You got to remember, this is Anthony Richardson. Hey, I like AR, but it's going to be the toughest defense he's faced, and we've seen him make some boneheaded mistakes. I definitely think he makes some here against this Steelers defense. I'm not overcomplicating this one. I think the Steelers have the better defense. I think, honestly, the offensive matchup might be pretty closer to a wash than people may think. And I think it's a head coaching mismatch. So I think the Steelers are favored on the road for a good reason. I'm going to lay the points here with Pittsburgh. We're in Chicago, where the Chicago Bears are now laying 3 points on the Los Angeles Rams. Big Al McMorty, do you trust Caleb Williams laying 3 points in this football game?
I guess I do. Look, I had the Rams last week. I trusted them without any players. They came back from a 14-0 deficit, and they upset San Fran as a 6-point home dog. But off that emotional upset win over their biggest rival, now I want to fade the Rams in their next game. And Chicago, obviously, they've lost their last 2 games, but Chicago's 45-26 ATS at home when they are off back-to-back losses and not favored by more than 3 points. So that's the situation here. The number's sitting on 3. I'm going to take the Bears.
For me in this game, roster for roster, player for player, man for man, the Bears are the better football team. But this is another game where there's a clear head coaching mismatch. And I think that pretty much makes up for any of the talent on the field, especially when the quarterback for the team that has the head coaching deficit is not as good as I think people think he might be. I still have yet to see Caleb Williams really wow me this season. I'm not laying 3 points with the Bears. I can't do it. We just saw the Rams beat a better team last week in the Niners. This Rams team, they're not that good. Player for player, man for man, roster for roster. There's a lot of teams better than them, but Sean McVay has proved he's one of the best head coaches in the league. And a minute ago, I talked about Mike Tomlin and how good I think he is when you pair up a good head coach with a good defense. Great things happen. Well, there's another duo you can pair up, and good things typically happen as well. And that's a good head coach with a really good quarterback, and that's what we have here with the Los Angeles Rams. So I think that's enough. In all honesty, I think the Rams might be live for back-to-back upsets. Taking the Rams here plus the points and straight up on the money line. Mitch?
Yeah, player for player, roster for roster, all that other stuff, I think the Rams are the far better team in this one. I don't even think it's close, and especially at the quarterback mismatch that you have here with Caleb Williams, who's definitely in that 31-32 discussion out of 32 teams, and Matt Stafford, who's probably, as far as arm strength at least goes, and accuracy, I don't know where he lies, but he's somewhere way ahead of that. Caleb Williams is just
top 6, top 7 for sure. I think
Caleb Williams will be back up for your Cowboys at some point, and I just think that it's just the Bears. One thing that they haven't been able to do in the last 35 to 40 years is draft a quarterback, and I just think Caleb Williams is just more proof of that. And then numbers, I don't have to make anything up or say, or like I normally start blurting out numbers, and you guys call me out on them, but in this case, 32nd in yards per play in the NFL. There's only 32 teams. I mean, it's just absolutely terrible. While the Rams defense at stopping the run, obviously without Aaron Donald, not quite the same thing. And, yards allowed per game, they've been giving it up as well. But the Rams offense has been putting points on the board. I just like the Rams in this one. I think they win this thing outright.
Mitch, just one thing to key on what you said. For as bad as the Rams are against stopping the run, the Bears are just as bad running the football. I think the Bears are like 30 or 32 of rushing the football in the league this year. So
they're not too good at throwing it either.
So I'm with you. I think I'm on the Rams in this one as well. Circle pick, maybe.
28th in completion percentage for the Bears, 30th in yards per attempt, 30th in QB rating.
Terrible. You know what I like to call that? Overrated and overvalued. Next game up, we're in Arizona, where the Cardinals, 3.5-point favorites over the Washington Commanders. Commanders played a hell of a game last week on primetime. Jaden Daniels, my guy, what a game you played. I'm going to toss that up to the Bengals defense just being bad, though, is what I'm going to toss that up to it being. Short week. Yeah, I got questions about Washington, especially now on the road. I'm taking Arizona here. I think Arizona's the better football team. Straight up, just flat out. I think Arizona's the better football team. I think Arizona probably wins this game comfortably. Washington, they still have their issues. This is still a team. A younger football team. They're running backs out. Austin Eckler will miss this game as well with a concussion. I just think that a lot of the things they were able to take advantage of in Cincinnati on Monday will not be here against this Cardinals team this week. And I think the Cardinals will be able to definitely take advantage of that Washington Commanders defense that was suspect as well in that Monday Night Football game. I think the Cardinals probably shred them here. I'll lay the points. It's over a field goal for a reason. I'm going to lay the points here with Arizona. Mitch?
Yeah, I think the Cardinals probably win the game, but I like the Commanders plus the points in this one. I don't trust Arizona to beat anybody more than 3 points. They just seem to be a heart attack special type team, and the defense is just an absolute sieve. They can't stop the run, 5.7 yards. Just not good. And completion percentage against, they're 32nd in the NFL. Teams completing over 75% of their passes against this Arizona defense. That just does not get it done for a team that you got to lay points with. On the offensive side, Kyler Murray, I believe he's been underrated. The Commanders are the Commanders. They're going to have lousy numbers across the board, but I think they at least make it interesting. I'll take them. Points.
Big Al?
Did you guys see that play at the end of the first half in last week's game, the Lions and the Cardinals with the 2-minute warning?
No.
Mitch, did you see it?
No. Not that I
That's
remember.
crazy.
I probably did.
Oh, my God. It was like one of the worst officiating calls I've ever seen. So Detroit, Stafford, hikes the ball with maybe 2 minutes and a half second.
Yeah. I did see that. Jared Goff. I did see that. I did see that.
Right. So there's a pick six, and then the refs say the pick six doesn't count because of the 2-minute warning. I mean, when I looked at it, he hiked the ball with a half second before the 2-minute warning. But even still, like you see, you see the refs, let, like, even with the 35-second clock or whatever, it'll hit zero, but they give it an extra beat anyway all the time. I mean, so for them not to give the defense that pick six was insane.
Yeah, it was the game. It was the game.
Yeah.
It was
Anyway,
the difference
I
in the
just
game.
usually, Mitch, you're the guy who rails against the
Oh no,
refs.
I do. I remember it. I remember
Yeah,
it.
that was one of the worst things I've seen all year.
Terrible. Terrible.
Anyway.
I don't watch the games with sound, but I know they were showing it over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. I like Arizona to bounce back here, off that home loss. Arizona's now 35-11 ATS at home, off a home loss when it wasn't favored by 6 more points. So I think this is a really good situation. And of course, I also want to go against the Commanders off their big upset win on Monday night. So I'm going to take the Cardinals minus the points.
Next game up, we got the
Except
San
Steelers.
Francisco 49ers at home at the crib with the New England Patriots rolling into town. We know the stat with the huge dogs. Is this a spot, Mitch, where we just blindly bet big dogs, or you think we're going to start to see some buyback going the other way? Favorites are going to start beating up on bad teams. And is this a game where we take the favorite and lay the points?
I think that we're gonna start to see some of the favorites start to hammer some of these dogs. But I think the issue for me with the 49ers is you got to really watch the injury wire here with this team, because they looked like a team that was half a team last week. And I've said this about Brock Purdy a lot over the last 2 years, and I always get crushed in the comments, so feel free to have at it on me. I'm used to it at this point. He's not a good enough quarterback to carry the team on his back, and he can start rattling off some stats and some completion percentage and how he got to the Super Bowl and all those other things. But the reality of it is he's not like a Dan Marino or Matthew Stafford type arm where he can just thread the needle down the field. He needs help, and he has a lot of it. The thing about the West Coast offense is the dink and dunk and the distributing of the football. But when you don't have Deebo Samuel and you don't have Kittle and you don't have, McCaffrey, these are not just players that are missing. In one of the earlier games, Jay was like, "Is the Eagles and the Bucks?" Jay's like, "Well, the players that they're actually missing is worse." But these are all pro players that they're missing, and I think you have to take that into consideration. I don't think the Patriots are going to win another game all season, but I think that they figure out a game plan here where they say, you know what? We're going to take away whatever you got left. It's Ayuk, right? And Jennings. We're going to take that away from you. And then, beat it. Let's see if Brock Purdy can beat us. And I think that they can at least keep it close that way. I'm going to take the Patriots.
Fair enough. Big Al McMorty.
Yeah, I mean, we talked all last week about how poorly those favorites of 6 or more were doing. They were 0-8 ATS the first 2 weeks, 1-4 ATS last week, so 1-12 ATS combined. San Francisco is now favored by double digits, and this is the first point spread of the entire season more than 8 points. So although I kind of agree in principle that the favorites are going to, start to begin covering these big numbers, I can't lay 10 points given how poorly the big favorites have done this year. And then also the 49ers are 3-18 ATS at home when favored versus an opponent that's not off a win. So I'm going to hold my nose. I'm going to take the Patriots plus the double digits.
I think the Panthers are the worst team in the league. I think right in front of them are the New England Patriots. I think the 49ers, when healthy, are still the best team in the NFC. I'm not overcomplicating this one, fellas. We're going to see good teams beat the hell out of bad teams here soon. We've seen some ugly games this season. The spreads just weren't what they were in those games. So I'm not going to let the numbers run me off of a game where I think one team is just head and shoulders better than the other. I've started to change my tune on Brock Purdy a little bit. I don't think last week's game was on him. Honestly, I thought he played a really good game. And I think he plays another good game here. The 49ers should win this game by 14 plus. And off of the weird, bad loss last week, I think they come here locked in and loaded. Probably hold the Patriots to under 10 and probably kick the crap out of them. I'm going to lay the points here with the Niners. We head to Las Vegas. I wish I was there. I love Las Vegas. But we got the Raiders Laying 2, I currently see on the Cleveland Browns. Big Al McMorty. These two teams hasn't been the greatest start for them. They both need a bounce back. Who gets it here?
Well, the Browns were upset last week by the New York Giants. They lost 21-15. I like Cleveland to bounce back here. Cleveland's 13-2 ATS off an upset loss when matched up against an opponent which isn't a winning team. And then also the Raiders, forever now, they've been horrible at home versus losing teams when not getting 3 or more points. They're 24-60 ATS. I can't lay points with the Raiders. I'm going to take Cleveland.
This is probably my least favorite game this week. I won't have any action on this game come Sunday unless something just falls out of the sky and it's an epiphany that puts me on something. And this one, I can't tell you how I feel about it though. And the way I feel is I want to take the Raiders. It's under 3, and I think they probably walk this game off as time expires. The Browns, until they get a running game, I don't trust this team. The scheme they're running is not the scheme for Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson just weekly just keeps taking steps back. This Cleveland defense doesn't seem to be the defense from a year ago. We have seen this Raiders team play well this season. They went to Baltimore and got a dub. I'm just going to think that last week was just an anomaly. It was just an egg that they dropped. It was a bad team, and like Big Al said, they don't play well against bad teams, and that makes me a little nervous in this football game because I think Cleveland's a bad team. But I'm going to take the Raiders. Home opener. Let's get it done, Raiders. Mitch, how you feeling?
I don't give out a lot of totals, but I am here. This is an under all the way. These are 2 lousy teams and 2 teams that have been about as inconsistent as it gets. Inconsistency is usually means a lot of mistakes. And I think that's what we're going to see in this game. Blown opportunities and mistakes. And I think that's what this is about. You have 2 of the best pass rushers in all of the NFL in this game, Myles Garrett and Crosby, going at it head to head. And I expect both quarterbacks to be running for their life. To me, it's a little surprising just how bad Deshaun Watson is when he's flushed from the pocket like that. You just think that he'd be better than that because it's like he spent his entire college career and his entire NFL career being swept from the pocket like that. It just seems that it's 1 out of every 4 throws is a laser, to one of his receivers. But the other ones, oh man, I'm not really even sure what the hell he's doing out there. But the Raiders, they're pretty much trash. And I think Jay hit the nail on the head. Without the running game, the Browns are really struggling. And I just think this one stays under the total, and I think we'll even see some missed field goals.
I misspoke. This is not the Raiders' home opener, but everything else I still feel the same about.
2nd week in a row.
Yeah. Next game up, we got the defending champs, the Kansas City Chiefs, out on the road facing the Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers. Right now, I'm seeing 7-point dogs in this one. Do your line shopping. This line's kind of been bouncing throughout the week. The reason is because the quarterback for the Chargers is listed as questionable. Of course, he played in limited action last week, didn't make it through the game. He was been limited in practice this week. Currently, at the time of recording this video, I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you if he's playing or not. What I can tell you, though, is regardless if he plays or not, I will be on the side of the Kansas City Chiefs. That's what I can tell you. The Chiefs are just the better football team, in my opinion. I think that they played a similar team last week in the Atlanta Falcons to what I think the Chargers are, and I like how they handle business, especially on the road, Sunday Night Football. Things didn't necessarily go their way throughout the entire game, and they still prevailed, won, and covered. If there's a backup quarterback in this game, then I definitely think the Chiefs are the play. Herbert, I think he's, the saving grace of this Chargers team. Without him, I don't think Dobbins does enough in this game to keep it close. With them, I still don't think they do enough to keep it close. I think Harbaugh, hey, you're going up against a real team this week. You're going up against a real head coach this week. I'm going to lay the points with the Chiefs on the road. Mitch, how you feeling?
Earlier we talked about square teams and public teams and all that kind of stuff, and I got to say, I don't generally say this. Even earlier, I might even be contradicting myself. The Chiefs could be the squarest play of the entire season. This is ridiculous. They've covered 8 of their last 9 games. I got news for you. The guys in Vegas just don't let those things go on forever. And this one looks to be a solid spot where the Chargers are a very, very live home dog for an outright upset win. The Chargers, when you look at the actual numbers, when you drill down a little bit, they have one of the top run defenses in the entire NFL. And they also have one of the top rushing attacks in the NFL. And the Chiefs' run defense, I would say dog poop. And their pass defense is even worse. The Chiefs' defense has really not been very good this season. And you've seen, other teams put numbers up on them. Mahomes is a magician out there, and he eventually will run out. The Chiefs have won a bunch of Super Bowls, but it's not like they're running the table out there. I think the Chargers are a live dog, and you got to at least take the points here, at the very least.
Big Al?
Yeah, I agree with what Mitch just said, and I'll just throw out a stat. The Chiefs are now 0-6 ATS. Their last 6 is road favorites off a point spread win. So this is not the spot you want to, lay points with Kansas City. Moreover, defending Super Bowl champions are 41-65 ATS when favored by 7 or more points on the road. So that goes back to 1980. And then we've talked for the last several weeks now how bad favorites in the NFL are doing of 6 or more. Well, the Chiefs are laying 7. Teams in the NFL this year now 1-12 ATS when laying 6 or more points. You just can't lay this kind of number on the road. So I'm going to take the 7 with the Chargers.
Sunday night football, ladies and gentlemen. I've been waiting all day for Sunday night. Got a good one this week. We got Buffalo out on the road facing Baltimore. Baltimore, 2.5-point home favorites. Mitch, who do you like here?
I like that I have multiple TVs, so I won't have to listen to the sound on this one because it's probably going to have a pretty good game on the field that can only be ruined by 3 hours of Chris Collinsworth analysis. And I think that, I like the over about of the times where he expresses his opinion as a pompous ass. But I like the Ravens in this one. I like the way that, these are 2 playoff style teams. This is a playoff basically game. These are 2 teams that could easily meet down the road in the AFC Championship or somewhere in the playoffs. These are teams and players that have all been there and done that. I just think the Ravens are a little bit more complete. I know the Bills, have certainly looked very good throwing the football, putting up some pretty big numbers, but I think the Ravens, they're just going to hammer it up the gut. That's what you do against those type of defenses, and they got the guys to do it. It's going to be one of those games, buckle up the chin straps and, hammer it up. And I just think I like the Ravens rushing attack just a little more. I think James Cook has definitely surprised me as an every down back for the Bills, but I just don't think that he's got what it takes in a game like this. I'm going to take the Ravens at home.
Fair enough. Big Al Morty.
Well, the Ravens got off the schneid last Sunday when they defeated Dallas 28-25, and they're now going to host the undefeated Bills. And we all saw what Buffalo did on Monday Night Football, blowing out Jacksonville 47-10. But one of Baltimore's long-term winning trends has been against non-division teams if their opponent had a winning record. So they've done really well in that situation. They've gone 82-49 ATS versus non-division winning foes, including 38-17 ATS as a favorite. And I don't want to overreact to Buffalo's 37-point win, and especially when you consider that NFL teams off wins by 37 or more points, they've gone 16-36 ATS. Let's not overreact to what Buffalo just did. Let's fade them and lay the points with Baltimore.
I'm with you guys. I'm on the Baltimore Ravens in this one as well. It's just a sell high point for me on Buffalo. And I've come out. I've been a critical Josh Allen hater over the last couple of seasons, but I've come out and said, Josh Allen, man, hats off to you, bro. Through 3 weeks, you're my MVP. You are. You've played amazing through these 3 weeks, but I also have to be real and kind of question the level of competition that you guys were playing as well. I think that's fair to do. Arizona, Miami banged up, and Jacksonville. I think this Ravens defense will be the best defense you guys have faced all season. And they're, especially at home, they're not going to give you those same looks that these other teams gave you. So I think Josh Allen, you're going to have to do it again here. And I just don't think on the road in Baltimore is a spot where you necessarily overcome it all by yourself. Talent for talent, player for player, man for man, roster for roster, I still believe the Baltimore Ravens are the better football team, although they lost a lot of depth over the offseason. Hey, quarterback matchup, not many games will it be pretty much a wash with Josh Allen, but in this one, you can even make the argument that the better quarterback is on the other side. So I'm getting the better team and a quarterback wash, and this team's at home. Taking the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to lay the points. On to Monday Night Football. We got a doubleheader again. Back-to-back weeks doubleheader on Monday Night Football. This first one, not as good as the second one, but got the Miami Dolphins at home at the crib with the Tennessee Titans coming in. Hey, Big Al, do you trust Will Levis laying points on the road?
I'm going to look at the total here. What I really want to do is take the over. When you take a look at what Miami's done this season, they started off with 20 points in overtime on offense. Then they scored 10 against Buffalo, then 3 last week. I think a lot of people are going to be sucked in by those numbers and look for this game to go under the total, but I like the over. I'm going to run the other way and look for a high-scoring game.
I'm going to take the Dolphins at home at the crib. I think, as of right now, I believe the starter will be Tyler Huntley. I believe Huntley's an upgrade over Skylar Thompson. We've seen Huntley in real regular season action just be a distributor, get the ball to where it needs to be, and keep his team in position to be where they need it to be. And I think that's all you have to do with the talent that this Miami team has surrounded around it. The Tennessee Titans, oh my God, week after week after week, they just continue to shoot themselves in the foot, man. And it's just time to just call a spade a spade. I haven't added to the do not bet list in like 6 months. We have to make a new do not bet list, though, because the Tennessee Titans are officially on that list. Will Levis is ass. He's as terrible as it gets. The Titans very well could be 2-1, maybe even 3-0 if Will Levis wasn't as bad as he is. But if he's still the starter, especially on the road, prime time, no way in hell I'm expecting the Titans to win this game. Give me the Dolphins. They're the more talented team. They should pull it out, even despite being on their third quarterback for the season. Mitch, how you feel?
Yeah, Dolphin season ticket holder, grew up in Miami, and really, really hate McDaniel as a coach. I've been pretty vocal about that. But the thing is the Dolphins, without Tua, really are not the same team. But it just shows you even more how bad of a coach this guy is. I think the Dolphins still are a loaded roster on both sides of the ball. I mean, they have a ton of talent, especially, defense. I mean, I just think that this defense against Will Levis is just a bad thing that's going to happen. Throw in that Miami weather where it's either going to be ridiculously muggy even at that time of night, or it's going to be pouring down rain. Not going to help Levis and the Titans here. I'm going to take the Dolphins.
Last game of the week, Monday Night Football. We got a good one here. We got the undefeated Seattle Seahawks. I don't think many people would have thought this team would be undefeated at this current point of the season, but they're now on the road facing the Detroit Lions, a team that was just in the NFC Championship a year ago. Should be a really good one here on Monday night. Lions, 3.5-point home favorites. I've said this many a times. I don't know what it is about Coach Campbell and this Detroit Lions team, but they love to cover point spreads. They're the most profitable team the last couple seasons in the NFL. I love me some Coach Dan Campbell, and I think the Lions win and cover here in this one. Shout out Coach McDonald. Is that what I think it's McDonald. I sometimes get it confused with McDaniel. It's McDonald, though. Shout out Coach McDonald. He's had a hell of a start to the season. I thought the Seahawks might have taken a slight step back losing Pete Carroll, but they've had a hell of a start to their season. But now on the road, prime time, I think this is kind of a spot where they cool off a bit. I think this Lions rushing attack with this two-headed monster, it's going to be a lot of teams that struggle stopping that. The Seattle defense is really good. I still have some questions about their offense and Geno Smith, and I think that's really what arises here. I think the Lions are just a better football team, and again, being the most profitable team over the last couple seasons, I trust the track record of Dan Campbell. I can't believe I'm saying these words. I trust Jared Goff. Believe it or not, he's earned my trust over the last couple seasons. Give me the Lions. I'm going to lay the points with them at home at the crib. Mitch, how you feel?
I'm going to take the Seahawks here. I really like the way they're playing defense. Number 2 in the NFL in yards against, and number 1 in passing yards against, number 1 in yards per completion against, number 1 in yards per attempt against, number 2 in QB rating against. All these things that just really play into the hands of, we haven't seen ugly Jared Goff in a while, and I think this really sets up to be one of those situations. Yeah, he's surrounded by a lot in Detroit, and it covers up for a lot of his deficiencies. And I think the Lions are one of the more overrated teams in the NFL. And I just think that's the way that it works. This Seahawks receiving corps is the best in the NFL. They are the best. And I think, if Geno Smith, obviously he's going to be under heat. He's going to get sacked. I mean, no doubt about it in this game. He is going to get sacked. But if he can avoid the mistakes and the Lions can and the Seahawks can set the tone on the ground, I think the Seahawks defense eats the Lions for lunch. I like the Seahawks in this one, at least with the points, if not outright.
Mitch, I hate to do this. And all those, the stats are the stats. The numbers are the numbers. Context matters a little bit, though, with those numbers. Those quarterbacks were Bo Nix in his first game of his career, Jacoby Brissett, and Skylar Thompson. So
all quarterbacks that have all teams that have more wins than half the teams out there. It's you can only beat who's in front of you, and the Seahawks are doing that. And to me, you look at the Lions and you look at their 2 wins. One was an overtime win against the Rams, who you said earlier, man for man, the Bears were better than, and they are roster for roster, man for man, I think was the words they used. And, they took the Lions to overtime in Detroit in a game that they should have won. And then really, last week against the Cardinals, it was a bad call that kind of turned the whole game. So, the Lions really could be 0-3, at this point.
Fair enough. Big Al McMorty, how you feeling? Last game of the week.
Last game of the week, I think it's going to be a very high-scoring game. Detroit has played all 3 of its games under the total so far this year, but I like this game to go over the total. Detroit's now 19-4 over the total at home if it was not off and over in its previous game. So we'll look for the offenses to do a lot of damage this week. I'm going to take the over.